So the claim I'm responding to is human activity has increased the CO2 and methane levels, which has significant influence on global climate and global warming. And my opponent's claims are greenhouse gases levels have increased in the atmosphere as a cause of human activities. Human population increases. That's the first one. Second one, human population increases, which increases pollution, specifically especially the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. And the third one is cutting down forests for land use decreases the oxygen level that is produced by plants. So I'm going to be responding to that. So the opposite of that would be either CO2 or methane levels have not increased as a result of human activity, which they have, so I'm not going to argue that point. But if it has, then it is not significant. It's not a significant influence on the global climate change or global warming, which is what I'm going to advocate. So the first claim that they made was that greenhouse gases levels have increased in the atmosphere as a cause of human activities. And the problem with this evidence is that, or the problem with the evidence that she showed is that she threw out a lot of numbers, percentages, facts, and figures, which look good, but the metrics were never quantified in any meaningful way. So we have all these percentages, but we don't know how it correlates to an actual impact. So like, is 77% actually significant? Is it not? You know, is 44 or whatever it was, 44% of methane significant? So you know, like that kind of stuff. We don't have a direct correlation. So numbers by themselves, as you know, are just meaningless. Some of the reasoning challenges is, like I said, is the meaning of the actual numbers. So is it meaningful, is it not meaningful? That wasn't really addressed. So in opposition to this, I actually looked up if it was meaningful, and a study by an expert in Waterloo, Dr. King-Ding Liu, showed that CO2 emissions weren't actually really meaningful. It was more chlorofluorocarbons, or the CFCs. So, and I have a quote by him, and this is what he says. Most remarkably, the total amount of CFCs and ozone depleting molecules are well known. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted. Correspondingly, the global surface temperatures have also dropped. In a striking contrast, CO2 levels have kept rising since 1850. And it's now at its largest rate. So what that means is that even though we've been pumping in CO2 levels, the studies have shown that it doesn't really have any effect. And what has more effect was the CFC emissions. But CFC emissions are no longer a big deal because we have kept that in control. Since, according to him, has decreased since around the year 2000. So that's not meaningful. All right. So the secondary claim is human population increases pollution. Human population increases pollution, and then she's talking specifically about the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. But we just showed that the CO2 levels in the atmosphere, according to the study by Dr. Liu, it's not meaningful, so it's irrelevant in the matter. So that's the problem with that evidence. But some problem with the reasoning is that she's inferring that a population increase will actually demand more food and more transportation, and that these kinds of activities will lead to fossil fuel burning. And so, yeah, you might get more need for food, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to burn more fossil fuels. Like the current state of affairs is we're using fossil fuels to feed ourselves, but there's been a trend shown if you've taken like Ag 101 or geography of like California and stuff like that, to talk about urban planning and stuff like that. And there's been a significant move in the last few years to just growing your own stuff, so locally grown markets and stuff like that. And I think you've seen in the news that like one of these local markets got displaced, and there's a big dispute. I think that was up in Altadena. So another thing is that the evidence of the metrics are from 1970 to 2010. So we're going to have a skewed data set because the 1990s happened in that time period, and that's when this was actually an issue, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and so you're going to get a skew. So my counterclaim for that usually centers around the urban planning. So we have more public awareness. So this is not really an issue, and really the issue is more awareness of sustainable living. That's the issue, and you can see this because the EPA has shifted their focus from we're pumping too much stuff into the air to we need to have a sustainable living standard. So the focus has shifted. So it's relevant. The third claim is cutting down forests for land use decreases the oxygen level that's produced by plants. The problem with this evidence that's presented is the article actually talks more about the effects of CO2 on the growth of plants, not the impact. So not the impact of oxygen in the atmosphere. So it's just saying something. It's just saying more to the effect of, oh yeah, increased CO2 doesn't mean increased O2. It means richer roots and stuff like that. But it doesn't really talk about the impact. Some of the logical reasoning is that we're actually deforesting for the purpose of expanding land, and if you're keeping up with current affairs in the ag department or the geography department, we're actually seeing that that's not true anymore. We're actually, the problem lies is that we're depleting the agriculture land, so it has nothing to do with deforestation, and that urban planning has actually led to more of a stacking. So instead of spreading out all over the place like we've done in the last few years, we're building upwards, so we're stacking stuff, and you can see that like in LA's urban planning and stuff like that. So the kind of claim on this is the University of Michigan has shown that the population is going to level off at mid-century. So we're not even increasing anymore at such a huge rate, so we're going to level off pretty soon. And the Scientific American also states that most of the oxygen comes from plankton in the ocean. So really, cutting down forests has nothing to do, or has very little to do with the amount of oxygen in the air. So yeah, to summarize, we can pretty much conclude that it doesn't really have a significant impact on climate change.
All right, well, the structure is pretty well laid out for us, so it should be easy to follow. On the first point, there's good signpost. Basically, you have a good challenge on what the statistics mean, and I think that that's a reasonable challenge to make. You remind us of what the evidence was on that particular point, and then you've got a counterclaim on causality that I think is pretty relevant, and you've got some evidence on that particular point. So on that point, I think that you do a good job providing some counter evidence to support the inference that you're making on the first point. On later points, though, I think it's a little bit more problematic because we got a lot of stuff that ends up being asserted. You basically try and explain this link between CO2 and oxygen, and you claim that that's what the whole article is all talking about. And I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The inference that's being made here is that it's not something that we have to worry about. And apparently I would know that if I took Ag 101 or the California class, but I haven't, so I don't know those things. Perhaps you should inform me about that and provide that information in the argument. There's a challenge on this data that says, well, this includes that 10-year period of the 90s, and that was all screwed up. And I'm going, well, I mean, I know I lived in the 90s, they sucked, but that doesn't tell me anything about how that applies to this particular issue. What the heck is going on here? So Bill Clinton was getting something in the White House. What's that got to do with anything in the atmosphere? It doesn't make any sense. The argument that there's been more public awareness and it's changed, that's all asserted, and I think you need some evidence on that particular point. On the deforestation issue, you kind of downplay the importance of forests in oxygen. I'm not exactly sure that that was what the advocate's argument is about. This is the same issue that you were talking about before with, what is the article talking about? We run into the same sorts of problems. And again, apparently if I've taken an ag class or the geography class, I would know this. And again, I haven't, so I don't know those things. You need to provide that kind of information. You talk about how we're, stacking things now in terms of urban planning and say, that's LA's urban plan, but I don't get a source citation on that. This is another one of those assertions. I finally do get a couple of source citations at the end of the speech, one from the University of Michigan, but it sounds like it's a paraphrase as opposed to a direct quote that the population is going to be leveling off at mid-century. Like I said, that is a paraphrase. I don't get a specific source citation. I don't get a direct quote. You need to give us the direct quotes, especially on something like that. And the same thing, with the plankton in the ocean. At least you've given us a source citation on it, but again, it sounds like it's a paraphrase. So I think you need to be a little bit sharper in your utilization of the evidence on these points. All right, thank you.